As a lover of both Touhou and strategy games, I first saw Touhou Spell Carnival and actually became very interested in it. Another aspect of what drew me in was that this was a mid-budget game made by some larger studios. Usually when I'm talking about Touhou fan games, I'm going over indie type shit made by, at most, a small team. But Touhou Spell Carnival here was developed by the triple threat of Idea Factory, Compile Heart, and Sting. If they sound familiar to you, then you've likely got an appetite for mid-budget RPGs, because these people are also responsible for games like the Neptunia series. It might feel like a mid-budget derivative work on Touhou from studios that are not in that indie space came out of nowhere, but I wouldn't quite say that. In the 2023 release Neptunia Sisters vs. Sisters, this shit had a definitely not Rei Mutalpa representing Team Shanghai Alice. And for reference, she's literally called Shanghai Alice. So it's clear that the people who made these games are fans of Touhou and likely got in talks with Zune to make a derivative game during the production of the Neptunia game. And that's probably how we ended up with Touhou Spell Carnival. Thank you to my supporters. If you liked the video, consider subscribing or even joining the Patreon. Link on screen and in the description. If you do, you'll be thanked in the videos, be able to watch each video a week early, as well as gain access to bonus videos. Touhou Spell Carnival sets the stage with Youkai hosting a Gensokyo-wide competition, the titular Spell Carnival. Each contestant duels each other, and whoever wins each duel gets to take the opponent as their new subordinate, and the overall winner gets a wish granted from Youkai. Damn, this setup sounds a little familiar. Okay, this setup is pretty fucking similar to Sengoku Gensokyo, another classic fan game that I've already talked about before, but this at least goes in a slightly different direction. Like, there isn't a manufactured incident with Youkai at the helm. There's a real incident going on here, and the Spell Carnival is an excuse to get everyone involved and figure out what the hell is happening. And unlike Sengoku Gensokyo, Spell Carnival's conflicts start with the tag Possession to explain why everyone is an aggressive asshole, which, honestly, you really don't need an excuse for everyone to be an aggressive asshole. That's just who they naturally are anyway. From here you were thrown into the fucking deep end, where you have to sink or sink even harder when it comes to the actual gameplay. Touhou Spell Carnival promises to use some real-time strategy shit with a bullet hell infusion. I'm going to occasionally make some 13 Sentinels parallels, because in order to talk about the issues and shit that Spell Carnival gets wrong, I need a point of reference of real-time strategy done right. When you start a battle, you have all of your characters and the enemy units tossed out onto a grid. This grid is your war zone, and there's no change in the camera or the grid itself. This is fine. You are going to be fed a lot of information coming up soon, so being able to see what the whole grid looks like at all times is useful. You can at a glance see your positioning, the enemy's movements and projectiles aiming for your fucking throat, and any obstacle in between. At the start, you wait a few seconds as your units need to charge up AP. This AP can then be used on various skills varying in different AP costs. You've got standard low cost single target attacks, slightly higher cost area attacks, defensive skills, some characters get healing, and other character specific gimmick skills such as Satori being built around copying other units' skills, essentially duplicating them, which I think is a pretty cool way to implement Satori as a character. You could use all of these, except that most of these are fucking pointless to have, and you should really only ever have equipped is your cheapest area skills, healing, and Alice's unique skill. But I'll get to her later. There really is no point using most single target attacks because area attacks are straight up better. Yes, single target is focus damage, but area attacks are not only offensive, but defensive as well. You'll eventually get to points where the whole grid is fucking flooded with bullets, and the best way to deal with a bullet is to shoot it with your own bullets. So if you spam as many cheap area attacks and flood the fuck out of the grid yourself, not only are you not getting hit, but also damaging the enemy units. Don't fucking bother with anything higher cost than 2 AP, because it takes too long to get that much when it's better to spam as hard and as fast as possible. That spam is actually made a lot easier to do thanks to the action shortcuts implemented during battle to make this shit actually manageable at all. If you press square, I'm using PlayStation nomenclature here, I don't give a fuck, you will attack that unit with the closest character. If you double tap square, then everyone will also attack at once. The topmost equipped skill gets priority, and whatever is cheapest will get priority after that if that character can't use the topmost skill at that time. So what this means in practice is that you unequip most of the useless bullshit on your characters and mash square on some enemy. As long as your only attack is a cheap area attack, then the best thing you can do is literally just mash, because then the characters will attack as soon as they can. There's other shortcuts you can use, like how triangle is for grazing, but who the fuck cares because there's no point in using this fucking ever. And to move characters, you can just press circle or double tap it to move everyone in that general area. I should probably go more in depth about both grazing and the movement and how surprisingly useless both are in this game, starting with grazing. Theoretically, if you press the graze button, a character can graze through a bullet and not get damaged while moving. But I'll be real here, I beat the game, and I still don't fully understand how the fuck this mechanic works at all. I really only ever used it once during Flandre's Ace spell card where she floods the screen with bullshit. I don't really understand what resource grazing requires, or if it gives you resources with successful graze. I got no fucking clue. But that's fine, because you don't even need to graze to get by, because with your area attacks, enemy bullets aren't reaching you to begin with. And if they do, just heal. In fact, most of the time, you don't even need to move at all. Would you fucking believe me if I told you the optimal strategy in this strategy game where positioning is supposedly a big fucking deal is to just move as little as possible? Your best strategy turns out to be the most brain dead shit you could possibly do. Don't move and mash square. That's all. You do damage, you rarely get hit, most things don't reach you so you don't have to move often, and when you do move, you can just clump up in the corner and be fine. The most you have to do is pay attention to your health bars and occasionally heal. It gets to the point where all I'm doing, battle after battle, is mashing square and I'm sometimes not even looking at the screen and I'm still trouncing the fuck out of the enemies. And shout out to whenever you press square you get this annoying sound that rings out. I think the worst part about this game, worse than even the most nothing battles where all I do is mash square and win, is that you can't pause. I mean, you can pause, but I'm talking the type of pause you get out of 13 Sentinels, where you can stop time and micromanage your characters. This game is extremely overwhelming with the information it throws at you and expects you to parse it and make a quick reaction. You just fucking can't. There's so much shit happening on the screen at any given time that it's impossible to focus on anything. Even if moving your characters and using other skills are actually better, it's impossible to do that. By the time you move your cursor over your character and select whatever action, you've already wasted time, and that time wasted is only making things harder. If you look at something like 13 Sentinels, you've got shit flooding the screen and you've got a bunch of characters to micromanage. But you can do that shit because you can pause in that game. You can take a breather, assess the situation, and use actual strategy in that game. But here in Spell Carnival, that's not gonna fucking happen. From second one of starting the battle, you are not given time to think. You are constantly being rushed or else you just die. Even managing 2 characters and all this on-screen fuckery costs too much brain CPU that it's impossible to keep up. So just don't. Just mash. The only saving grace with all this bullshit, and the only reason I was able to even beat this game, was because of Alice. But unlocking this bitch Alice was, itself, a bitch of a task to do. Her stage was insanely hard. You're expected to take out 15 enemies, Alice included, within the time limit, and I just couldn't. Loss after loss of being bombarded by bullshit that I just couldn't deal with as more dull fucks kept spawning in. The only way I even managed to scrape by a win was by dropping the difficulty down to easy on this fight. But once you get Alice, the game becomes a cakewalk. Alice is a unit that summons other units that act independently, and much like 13 Sentinels, the best units are the ones that summon more units. You've got more bodies on the floor to soak up damage and to throw out more projectiles themselves. And when one dies, you can just summon another up to an additional 6 fucking dolls. Straight up doubling your party size. As Alice levels up in this game, she unlocks abilities to make summoning dolls cheaper, allowing you to summon them way faster, as well as unlocking both defensive and healer dolls. She is easily the best unit in the game, and the only reason I was able to thug it out and hit credits. Without Alice, I'd probably have dropped this shit and wouldn't have been able to talk about this game in full and make this video. As you use characters in battle, you also unlock a series of small side stories starring them. They're optional reads and are just cute little stories. They're charming enough and only takes a couple of minutes to read each character's. This is a pretty good incentive to changing up your team composition and using different characters, which is a good thing. If you want to read their stories, you need to use them a couple of times. I still ignored doing that though. I only used the characters I liked the most and didn't bother changing up because it worked. That's not the only story you get in this game. Between battles you're given really high fucking quality visual novel segments. Right out the gate, these portraits are fantastic. They're really well drawn and animated nicely using live 2D. Cute! Super cute! Emoji Kairi type shit. While reading the cutscenes, I noticed that a lot of the animations tend to be synced up when multiple characters are on screen at the same time. You can just look at them move at the same rate, going up and down, up, down, and so on. The portrait animation should have been different lengths, or at least offset, so they weren't obviously animation locked together. Also, Youmu's shadow on her arm that's casted by the sword isn't tied to the actual sword. When it moves, the shadow doesn't follow. And you can tell when a Touhou fan game actually has some budget when it's fully voice acted, which this game has. The voice acting is generally pretty good. These are all professional voice actors after all, with each voice more or less fitting each character. But whether or not you think it fits is more up to personal interpretation and preference. I like Oku's and Youumu's voices, for example. Oku's is hella cute, and Youumu's got that right amount of dorkiness to it that suits her. And I like Marisa's deeper voice in this. Fanworks go back and forth portraying Marisa with a deeper or higher pitch, and I'm fine with both interpretations. Whereas I really like the art done for the portraits, I don't fuck with SD models. SD meaning super deformed. I just never fucked with SD. I never got into Super Robot Wars because of it, even though that's probably a series I'd be super into, but the bastardizations of designs I love leave a bad taste in my mouth. And these SD Touhou girls are also tasting bad. I understand why it's used here. It's cheaper to make since it's simplified designs and requires less details. And because of that, also cheaper to animate. Also, while playing the battles, because the camera's top down, you don't see the bodies anyway. Only their big ass heads, and having those big ass heads emphasized actually does make it easier to differentiate between characters at a glance. But fuck that, I don't care, still don't fuck with SD. I think the reason why I've been pretty harsh towards this game is because it is nothing but wasted potential. I like strategy games, and I like Touhou, and I've played other Touhou strategy games in the past. It's a combination that works. But when I played Spell Carnival, I just kept thinking that this game was not made for humans. It's too fucking overwhelming for anyone to actually engage with this in a way that the developers wanted you to play. It was missing the most important feature of being able to pause and set up your strategy. The absence of a pause killed this game's potential. But even after that, as time went on and I learned that the optimal strategy was to just not move and spam bullshit until I won, I became even more disappointed. The best way to play, the only way I could even win to begin with, was to not engage with the game, but to exploit it in the most boring way. I'll reiterate it here. Touhou Spell Carnival is not a game made for humans, so just disengage with it entirely.